I'm thrilled today to have Karen Hite on the podcast. Karen is the director of operations and co-founder of digital agency Hacker. She's the co-founder of Hite Digital, an Inc. 5000 ranked digital marketing agency. And she's the chief executive officer of the Committed Mastermind. With her husband, JC, they are committed to helping small businesses scale with stability, not just in their business, but at home as well, while also creating amazing jobs in Latin America. Karen, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Every time that we connect and chat is always a great time. So I'm excited about actually recording this for other people. Hopefully they enjoy the same way that we enjoy connecting. So yeah, excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. I always look forward to these. So this is going to be a great conversation.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
I would love to start, Karen, with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Yeah, man, that's a loaded question because I feel like I never thought I would be a leader the way that we are right now or what I'm doing today. I think from a young age though, I knew that I wanted to do good things, like I wanted to do things in the right way. And it's funny because my dad just wrote me a note and he's actually wrote this I always knew that you would be a leader. And I'm like, how do you know that?
Wow.
I didn't remember, us chatting about that, but apparently he did. And so I've always focused on serving. I think serving has been number one. So I never thought about being a leader, but I always enjoy serving. And through this journey, I've learned that some of the best leaders that I at least connect with the most are those that are actually serving others. So I think
Hmm.
that's kind of my relationship with leadership has always been, and it's biblical too, right? I
Mhm.
mean, put others before you, wash other people's feet, like in the time of your death, like you're washing other people, type of thing.
Yeah.
That just speaks a lot to me. And I think throughout, just because of my belief systems and just try to read the Bible, what does leadership actually mean in the Bible? It really is that servant leader. So my path has been always serving others, and through that I've just, I guess, naturally grown into leadership positions.
It's remarkable. I talk to so many leaders of different stripes and different industries and disciplines, and so many of them describe a similar thing that they didn't really see themselves that way, but other people saw something in them.
Mm-hmm.
And as they grew and as they developed, it's remarkable what God can do. It's remarkable how he never wastes an experience in our lives to make us into the person that he designed us to be.
It is crazy. And I think, if we think about stories just I don't know, in the Bible, throughout the Bible, right? You have Moses, you have Joseph, I mean, so many people that wow, their story has been amazing, and
Yeah.
how God has worked through them. Some people that you didn't think that deserved to be a leader, ended up
Mhm.
having those positions. And I think you can be any background, you can still be a leader. It doesn't matter the back. Sometimes those experiences that, I mean, Paul, right? Just experiences that we have seen through negative, positive, they can still be, it adds a lot of value to who you can become and how you can serve others through that. So I never think leadership is just this is the way that you do it. This is the road that you have to take to become a leader. I think it's a component of many experiences. And if you know how to make lemonade out of a lemon, then I think that's an opportunity to be a leader.
That's fantastic. You've already mentioned in this conversation, but I've heard you talk so many times before about the power of serving others.
Yeah.
And y'all really exhibit this as part of your culture. I believe every team, every business, every organization has a culture. You either have one you designed on purpose or you have one you didn't mean to have, but you have one, right?
Yeah.
This is such a part of the culture of Hite, right? This idea of serving others, leading with generosity. Has it always been that way? Has that always been a core value to what you do?
I I have to say yes, just because I don't think that there has been a time where we have when we started Hide, for example, like we started it. The first goal that we had was just like, we need to deliver our baby. So we need to find the funds to be able to accomplish that. So it has never been like, oh, we want to make this much money, and like this, like our goals have always been more oriented to an impact, whether it was like a personal impact, like just starting that out. And then once we were, oh, like our best basic needs are met, like, like it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with JC after, I think it was like after the first year at Height, we finally realized that we were in this point where we didn't have to check our bank account that often, where you're not
Yeah.
like kind of like scared to like give your credit card when you're about to pay because you don't know if it's
Right.
going to go through type of thing.
Right.
Once, and if you have experience, if you're listening to it, and you have experienced that shift in like, wow, I'm not living out of like scarcity in a way, but I'm actually like, oh, like I'm good at a good point. I think there's a big shift that happens in leaders then, because then you're starting to ask your question, like, what's next? Like, then why am I doing what I'm doing? Because you can fall into contentment real quick if you
Yeah.
don't have a vision. And so for us, I remember asking JC, what's next for us? Just as husband and wife, we've always like been leading a business. We've always been through these conversations together. And that's where we decided, like, okay, what's next for us? Like our family's needs are met in the most basic ways, but if we wanted to go bigger than where we were at that point, we needed to find something that was related to something that actually matters. I was actually
Yes.
just speaking about that with Sean, but for us, it was creating 1,000 jobs. We just decided to create that metric for us in the business so that it was such a big goal and so audacious. And the impact of that was, if we could create 1,000 jobs in Nicaragua, where we started business, if we could create that and started that there, paying what we were paying at that point, that would make us like the biggest economic business in Nicaragua, right? Like it was just like the
Wow.
biggest from the private sector. And so that just like that motivated us. And I think vision has such a big thing when it comes to like being the leader that you want to be, or you need to know where you're going to.
100%. When you establish that vision together, when you say, hey,
Yeah.
this is what we want to do, how did you begin to communicate that to inspire your team?
Because we've always wanted to make this culture of not only like towards others and our clients of like the servant leaders that we want it to be, but also, a place that we enjoyed it. We were very upfront with that from day one. Through our interview process, like anytime that we had him, like, I mean, he like just JC has this hat where it says 1,000 jobs, like, road to 1,000.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like it has been in anything that we do, really. Like when we started our agency as a white label agency, and our agencies knew that that was the goal that we had. So we've always communicated that, not only to the people that were impacted by it, but even the people that had anything to do with it. And even today, I was just talking to Sean about high level, and I'm like, I really think that, through high level, we can actually accomplish that goal. It might not be necessarily that mission has transformed quite a bit. And I think as a leader, you'll experience that. The more years you're in business, the more years you're going to understand that it's good to like question, that mission. Like, am I still living for that mission or not?
Yeah.
That has been our last year. And, for us, like we were just talking to Sean about it, and I was just, I really think that there's opportunities to create that impact that is not necessarily tied to just one business. It can be like maybe like different sides. And so it transforms you once you have that mission very clear. It transforms who you are and the things that you desire, the things that you don't want in your life. And that is when I think leaders live, their leadership, right? Like if you're a leader, like it has to show in the impact and the actions that you have. And I think that's the way that you communicate it to your team.
You wear a lot of hats. You
Yeah, you could say
were
that.
you were involved in a lot of things. I mean, digital agency hacker, right? Director
Yeah,
of ops and co-founder.
yeah,
Hite Digital co-founder, right? CEO of the Committed Mastermind.
yeah,
I mean, and this is not everything. This is just the big three that I pulled
yeah.
out. I mean, how do you balance all of that? And from what I can see from the outside, maintain a fantastic family life with your husband, with your kids? How do you do that?
Not easily. And I would say, like, one thing that I would say, like social media, you don't get to see all of it, right? And so, like, yeah, most people would. I had this message from somebody this week because we decided to. I'll give you this example of how we managed this. This month is going to be crazy for us. It's October. We have 5 events that we're either sponsoring, hosting, or just attending because we're invited to it. That just makes sense to go. And we only have like 4.5 weeks this month, so that means that we're traveling pretty much like every week, or like twice a week within a span. And this was the month that we were going to start baseball for one of our kids, baseball practices, and they had 3 games every week. They sent us a calendar, and so JC and I, we just had a conversation, and we just said we have to pull something out. So I think it's very much about communication and also understanding where our priorities are. And I would say being able to decide what things are going to fall through the cracks. One thing that, a lot of people's like, oh, we're juggling like we're juggling, right? Like all the time, like as business owners. And for us, I don't remember where we got this from, but this concept of like, well, all these things that you're juggling, let's say that they're balls. These balls are made of different things. Some of them are,
Yes.
crystal, some of them are plastic, some of them are rubber. So even if they fall, you're okay because at some point you can probably catch them again. But if like, there's some balls like the crystal one, if that drops, then it breaks, and it's going to take a lot of effort to to put it back together, right? So understanding where your priorities are at, I think it's really important. And I would say not being too hard on yourself when like, if one of the crystal balls, does happen to like, oh, it's slipping, not to like be so like not concerned is the word, but just like hard on yourself. Because I think like that's the point where if you're too hard on yourself with the priorities that you have, then you're making decisions out of like fear and not out of like, oh, I want to be involved in this, or we need to understand, and also that there's seasons for everything, right? As business owners, we have all gone through seasons where it's time to hustle, it's time to focus on the work, and yeah, our family life might be affected a little bit by it, but if we do have we need to have an end goal with that and also a due date with that. I'm going to hustle for this amount. Now, it doesn't mean that when we're saying like, okay, like things can fall in terms of priorities, it doesn't mean that it's going to be for months, because that's the problem. When you have like months and months and months of like just this kind of like sense of like I'm depriving myself from like from having this top of my priorities. So our baseball thing, we had to take our kid out, and we were like, this month it would be insane. Like we wouldn't be like, we would go to those games feeling frustrated, checking on our phones, like knowing that we have responsibilities that at the end is for our kids as well. Now, do I want to do that all the time? Like pull them out of like baseball practices and things like that? No, this is just for this month. And so like having that grace, I think, with each other, and we just chatted about it. And he was like, yeah, like you're right. Like this is going to be too much. But then another thing that we did is like, hey, there's one event that we don't need to go, the both of us. So like I'm actually staying at the event and he's coming back to be with the kids. So like and that's something that I really appreciate once you have a spouse where you're both on the same level, you're in a team. It's not about like, because easily, in whatever culture, you can still feel that sense of like, okay, the woman needs to go back and like stay with like the family. Like it's very normal. And I would love to do that. Right. But this one specific event, we had the opportunity of not having to be both of us there. And it was probably more important for me to be there than him, and understanding that and being able to make those decisions. Then we're both calm because, okay, you're taking care of that side of our lives, which is a business, and I'm going to be taking care of like this other side of our lives, which is our family and kids. And being in that season, I don't know, it's just it's a lot of communication, a lot of grace, all the time, because it's very easy to feel like you're not good enough in one of these areas at one point, or many points in your day, depending on when you're talking.
That's so good. And I hope that the listeners keyed in on really everything you just said. I mean, I hear people all the time. I hear clients, people that I'm working with talk about, well, it's just a season. It's just a season.
Yeah.
And I love how Carey Nieuwhof puts this. He says, if your season has no end, that's not a season. That's called your life. And so many people, there's no end. I love the intentionality you have of putting a back end on it and say, okay, We're going to sprint for this particular period of time, but then that's going to stop.
Yeah.
And the open communication and the transparency that you have together is so absolutely critical. And in my experience, so often lacking. I believe this is one of the superpowers that people can lean into. You can begin to communicate. This is a choice. Communication is a choice at the end of the day. And I love the transparency there. Like you say, social media is a highlight reel. You don't always see everything from the outside. And I'm curious, a lot of people look at you and they think, oh, wow, her journey's just been up and to the right. Like, she doesn't have to deal with the same challenges I've dealt with. She never has to worry about, the stuff that I have to deal with in my business. Like, if somebody were to tell you that, if they were to sit across the table and tell you that, what would your response be?
I would say probably go and watch the 30 days of failures that we just did, from Jason's Instagram account. That is actually one of the things and one of the reasons why we open up TCS with failures all the time. It's very easy to lose sight of the things that happen in the journey for an entrepreneur. And we're launching this event, as you know, we're
Mhm.
having a new event in Cersei next year. And I was thinking, what if we actually document this for everybody and kind of share the obstacles, and we're adding some
Wow.
new components to this on being a faith-based event, which is in today's days and age, it might not be like the cup of tea for everybody, which is totally fine, but there's challenges, right? Like, you're not only adding that component of already having an event is very difficult, right? But also having that kind of component of faith-based can be challenging too. And understanding how this is the first time that we're really exposing ourselves to something like that. Although, we bring, our values into anything that we do, but just very, very clear about it. Right. And so that, I think a lot of people, I want to motivate others to do the things, not because they look easy, but because there's a bigger impact,
Mm.
and because they can see that, oh, it's okay if things are not working out as you think that they're going to be, and it's okay being flexible, right? And being able to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to give it my 100%, and that's going to be my definition of success, and having a different definition of success than everybody else as well. I think it's just something that if somebody were to ask me oh, or say that my life is perfect, it depends, right? I may be leaving my definition of success. I can tell you that, there's seasons in my life even where we have been winning, quite a bit in the eyes of everybody. And in the back end, we're experiencing depression and anxiety, and we're very open about it. I think that's why we're so outspoken, or we just bring that concept of what success means, and then also the things that we have failed at, and we're proud of the things that we have failed at, because it has taught us to redirection and reposition where our focus has been, and where it needs to be. So I don't know. I would probably just send them to the Instagram account, I guess, short answer. Let's check out all of our failures there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that you are so transparent with your faith, with your values. I get, with the new conference scale of stability, I'm super excited about that, by the way. I think that's so going to be so fantastic. I believe that when people are looking at you and they attend one of your events, or they watch one of your videos, they see very clearly how important your faith is to you. They see clearly that you don't try to compartmentalize or segment that part of your life and wall it off, that it's a part of everything you do, that it's who you are. And I believe that authenticity draws people in. I teach often that, you've got to have in the presentation that you give of yourself, and even down to the business that you lead and the offers that you make, you need to have both magnets and scarecrows, and magnets that are going to draw the right people, and scarecrows that are going to scare off the people who they're not going to be a good fit. And watching you first at TCS and then since, and being a part of what I've watched you building, you're so clear about this. Clarity is such kindness. And I believe that is such a powerful example. Like, if you were talking to people who were still reticent, entrepreneurs, business owners who were still reticent about, yeah, but can I really be that authentic? Can I really bring
Yeah.
that part of myself out? How would you encourage them in that?
For me, I went through a season of like trying to understand, and we all go through this as we're maturing as business owners, and as our even our brands are maturing, as we feel more comfortable in what we're doing, and realize the things that actually matter.
Hmm.
For me, I guess like I would just share like my example, or like how I went through this process of navigating, um, sharing my own journey of faith. I think it was the first time that we had gotten the Inc. 5000 award. It was it was our first year for TCS. We had speakers like Damon John and Kevin Harrington and Corey and Willie Robertson and all these amazing people. 250 people in an event in Costa Rica. Over 100 and something team members. First year, like we
Wow.
literally found out about the award at TCS. So like it was like I think day two, and we just like put it on the team put it on the screen, and it was like such an excitement, right? And 2 weeks before that, I found JC in the bathroom floor of my shower in fetal position, crying, not able to get up from the floor. And I literally thought I was going to do TCS by myself. I literally thought
Oh my
that
goodness.
I have to, like, this was my thought process going into Costa Rica. I was like, I need to be able to mold myself. By the way, I had never spoken in front of like 250 people ever before, much less hosted an event. And we
Wow.
were doing all of that, right? And so, and I went into the event thinking, I need to be able to talk about any topic, because I don't know if he's going to be able to, anxiety and depression, right? And so, like, I don't know
Mhm.
if he's going to be able to. You don't plan those things. You don't plan those
Right.
anxiety attacks, right? So, like, if it happens, it happens, and somebody needs to like go into that stage. People have paid money. There's a lot of responsibility through that. The only thing that has helped us in being able to get out of that season of depression and anxiety, and I said all those things about like the 250 and like the award, because like in the eyes of everybody, we were very successful. In the eyes of everybody, like we were shaking hands with all this like Damon John, like everybody was like taking pictures, like we were having, it was like one of the highlights of our career, right? And I look back at those times with a lot of um grace, and it's just like it's great times and all of that. But I think I always think about what was really happening in the back of our minds, and
Mm.
in our personal story. And the only reason how we were able to get out of that was we started reading our Bible every day. We started focusing on priorities, and it hasn't been an easy journey, right? I didn't just start reading my Bible and then all of a sudden, oh, like we're done with that chapter of our lives, right? Like it continued to exist. But I will tell you, 3 years later, today, we're in a much better place in our family life, in our marriage life, in our personal lives, just as a whole, mentally, spiritually. And then it all started from making that decision of like, how do I start my day? Where am I starting my day with? I don't go into social media unless I have read my Bible. This is what I do. I don't go into social media if I haven't read my Bible. And in order to use social media, my first thing to do is actually post whatever from my daily. I do my Bible daily reading, and I select something that speaks to me. Right. And so like I don't go into social media without like making a post of my story on Instagram of the thing that just like it resonated with me, or I thought it was interesting, or I thought this might be helpful to somebody. There's a reason why I pick that every day. And that's the only way that I go in. If I don't do that, I don't go into social media, right? It's just like I don't do it. And since we have been doing that, because JC actually started that, and he has been reading the Bible like twice or three times in a year. Like he's overachiever. I don't go that far. I read it every day, but it has made such a difference. And so for me, it's not something necessarily about, oh, I want other people to see my values and I want to connect. Because I know that there's even a strategy behind it. There's people that, and that's why some people are actually not very trusting
Mm.
of like some people that
Yeah.
aren't spreading the faith, because they think like, oh, that's just a tactic for
Right.
business, and like, oh, they just want to like, that's a way to like target the audience type of thing.
Yep.
For me, I would say, which I have totally, I understand. I haven't experienced that, thank goodness. But eh, there's a Bible verse, there's a Bible verse that says like, at least they're spreading the gospel, right? So like I always think about it like, man, at least they're spreading. Maybe it's not the right way or whatever. But for me, it's more of like that has helped me
Yeah.
in my journey. And I know my story and how it has helped me like navigate some of the things that I know a lot of people struggle in private and they're not able to like share this with anybody that understands them.
Yeah.
So for me has been more of like, I know the impact that this verse, this, just reading the Bible has done in my life.
Hmm.
So like, why not share it with everybody else? Like, right. Why not share the thing that I felt saved us from I literally thought that I wouldn't have my husband for a long time or that something would happen, right? It's just when you're in such a hole where you don't see the light, um, you would think that, right? And so and
Yeah.
a lot of people go through that. And so like for me it's that. So I would say like you don't have to post a Bible verse, and say like, hey, like this, but share the things that have helped you, because if they help
Hmm.
you, then probably can help somebody else. And you never know whose life you're saving, whose family you're saving, the impact that it's going to have in somebody else's life. You talking about a situation doesn't have to be a religious or belief system based, but it can be. That's why we do value driven posts, right? Just to make sure that we're sharing with other people. I think that will help you connect a lot more than you saying that you're the best at something, and just like how many
Yeah.
clients you have created great results for. I don't know. And for me, it's like, I feel like there's a bigger mission for us than just making money. Right. And so
Yeah.
that has been more of the driver to live the life that we want to live, and just I don't know. There's multiple, I guess, answers to that, but that's just the one that I can probably just share right now.
I think that's fantastic. Your team, your business, your clients, they need you to lead at a higher level today than you did 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that same thing is going to be true 3, 4, 5 years from now. You're
Yeah.
going to have to lead at a higher level. They're going to need that from you. What are you doing to stay on top of your game and level up with the new leadership skills that your team, your clients, your business are going to need you to have?
Couple of things. We have definitely invested in having mentors that allows us to like understand and have a bigger picture. Like at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know, right? So like
That's right.
there's a reason why you have reached these levels and what you sometimes feel stuck, or why you have this like imposter syndrome, like you have never done this before, so it makes sense that you're doubting yourself, right, to like do things. And like one of the things that we say all the time, like how can you lead others if you cannot lead yourself? Like the
That's right.
first thing that you have to do is like understand like where you're at, what are the things that you need, and building environments that allow you to be that. So I think investing in people, investing in being in places where you can grow. And I we're very fond, obviously, of masterminds. We host mastermind, and I think that's an
Mhm.
amazing way to be able to connect, even with people that are in your same spot, right? Like, but people that have the same desires. I think that's
Yes.
very important. We have been really blessed to sort of create this environment for ourselves through our events and through sharing kind of like the things that we're interested on and our message, to connect with people that also can relate to that. And that has allowed us to create these opportunities for like conversations that, oh, like I'm struggling with this, and being very vulnerable. One of the things
Yeah.
that, with our teammates, we're the first ones to say if we did something wrong, right? Like I am like the first one to
Yes.
say, I do not know how we're going to pull this event. But we're going to do it, we're going to like
Yeah.
try it, and we're gonna like accomplish this, and we're probably gonna fail. We really talk so much about failing, it's not even funny. And for those that are not used to that concept of failing, I never had my parents talk to me about failing. I only had my parents talk to me about succeeding. And it's very interesting to me that as I was getting into those moments of like success, I never knew what to do with the counterpart of that, right? Like with the other part of like
Mm.
there's only two ways to deal with it. It's either success or failure. But once you're succeeding, like then the failure becomes more clear of like, this is what can go wrong and what happens. I'm not prepared for that. So the more we talk about these things, I think the easier it is even for our teammates to be able to say, there is a plan if this fails. There is a reaction that I understand the reaction that we will get from our leaders if this doesn't work out.
Mm.
um Early from our business, when we started the business, we talked about safe to fail experiments. This
Yeah.
concept of anything that we do, we obviously are not going to jump into something if it can like completely destroy families, and like we would never do that. We would try to be cautious, but understanding that the business at the end of the day is the safe to fail experiment. We can always go and find a job. We can always restart this business. We can and understand this relationship with failure. I think it's so key in you
Yeah.
being able to lead others, because if you can give them that opportunity to, hey, it's okay if you don't do this 100%, like having that grace for them as well allows people to say, you know what, maybe I can do it. Have somebody that believes in you enough to allow you fail. That's one of the key elements of delegating, right? That's why people don't
That's right.
delegate, because they don't believe that this other person can do something. They don't give that room for failure. So I think for me, that's we're talking a lot about failure in this podcast, but it's so key in being able to give yourself the opportunities to try things that you have never done before in a way that you can see what happens. Like the worst thing you can ask yourself at the end of the day, or at the end, I don't want to ask myself this question at the end of my life, like, what if I had done this? I want to
Yes.
do it, and I want to make sure that I said, I tried it. I was scared about it. I did it. Did I like it? Maybe not, but at least I know for sure the end result of that. And I'm not going to have that question at the end of my life.
Yes. So good. Yeah. By virtue of my work through the local church, I've spent a lot of time with people at the end of their lives. And so often, you know, I hear regrets. I've never once heard anybody say, I wish I had spent more time at the office.
Yeah.
Never once. Right. But I've heard a whole lot of people talk about exactly what you said. I wish I had. I wish I had. I wish I had tried it. I wish I had done it. So many relational regrets. I wish I had mended that relationship. I wish I had not been so stubborn. And I love how you frame that, Karen, that this idea of saying, I don't want to get to the end of my life. So now we're going to try it. We're going to try it. And we may fail. That's okay. Failure is something that has to be talked about because it's part of the journey. Anybody who thinks that failure is not part of the journey hasn't tried much.
Yeah.
You know, I think you need to be failing regularly because
Yeah.
that means that you're trying new things. I love how you frame that.
Well, it's out of experience. And also I feel like it gives me a little bit of like, it's okay if you fail, Karen. Like it's a little bit of grace.
That's right.
Like, okay,
That's
at least
right.
you tried something, that most people
Yes.
probably wouldn't, like at least you did that. And yeah.
100%. 100%. You are a continual learner, and that's come up a couple of times in our conversations. Is there a book that has made a really big difference in your journey that you would recommend to the other leaders who are listening?
Oh my gosh, yes. I wish I had read this book sooner. And once you read it, it's like, yeah, no brainer. But having this concepts kind of like come together, like it's one of those books where I felt like, oh, this all connected into this. And if I had this, I would have understood all these pieces and the importance of it. For me, it was the E Myth, the entrepreneur myth by a Michael Gerber.
Michael Gerber. Yeah.
Amazing book. I don't know how many years ago he did it, but for me that was the book that in that it was actually funny enough, I think it was like the first TCS or second TCS. I was reading it and I was like, I think it was the first or second, I don't remember which one it was, but I was reading, I was like, it made such an impact that I actually messaged him. I'm like, hopefully he sees it one day. Funny
Yeah.
enough, we ended up jumping on a call with him, JC and
Oh my
I, and
goodness.
we talked through our whole model for the franchising. We actually ended up shifting that model or changing that model because of that phone call with him and reading that
Wow.
book. That's how impactful this book was in our lives. And so if you haven't read this, you don't need to be a franchise, by the way, because I know it talks a lot about franchises there. You don't have to be a franchise to read this book. In fact, I feel like every business owner has to read this book. It's entrepreneurial myth, right? So it just allows you to bring concepts together and ideas and like really create a path that I have not seen in another book, or it hasn't impacted me like this book
Hmm.
has.
So good. Karen, often people walk away from an episode like this, a conversation like this, with one big idea. If you could define what you want people to walk away with, what you want their takeaway to be, what would you want that to be?
I'm in a season right now where I'm seeing a picture very clear of something that I want to accomplish. And I feel like that happens quite a bit in our lives. But I'm also experiencing this feeling of like, but I have all this stuff already, or I have all these things to do. So I cannot move into that yet.
Hmm.
Um, and I have prayed about it and I have asked for direction to see if this is actually something that I should be focusing on. So, like, that's number one. I would say, like, anytime that you feel that you're in a business decision, a life decision where you're like, what, like, should I go into that
Hmm.
or not? First, like, if you're a person of belief, obviously of faith, I would say, like, pray, like, talk about it with God and like just say, hey, like, is this where you want me to be?
Hmm.
I've experienced so many things where I first went to a person before I went to God. I first went into like trying to get answers from a human before I actually asked for divine intervention. And since I've shifted that, I feel so much better about the decisions that
Hmm.
I'm making, even if I do have to talk to somebody and get counsel, because it's biblical too that we have to,
Hmm.
like, ask for advice from others and that there's wisdom in that. But knowing where do I give my intention and priority? If you're a person of faith, I would say like that's number one. If you can shift that to ask God first, like what does He want from your life? Is this aligned with the purpose that He's brought you in? Because no matter what, He's going to be able to make it work, right? Like He makes things happen. But how much easier would it be if we were actually looking to connect with that source? And for those that are maybe like not into a belief system, I would say, like, being able to create those like safe to fail experiments, like I was mentioning, and testing things out and being quick to say, hey, like, how is this going? Like, just make decisions based on data. I think that's the one thing that most
Yes.
people have a hard time dealing with. And like, you will never know unless you do it and you see if it actually worked or it didn't. And if it didn't work, then move quick into the next thing, right? And just, but make sure that you're making the decisions based on actual data. If you're making decisions based on where you're at today, how you're feeling, maybe like you had a tough conversation with your spouse that morning, that those things are going to set you off the wrong path, right? So being able to track data and understand it and making decisions based on that, I think that has been something that has allowed us to really grow in our business and our life. And when you have that type of clarity, it's a lot easier to say what's happening. What's happening right now. Is it something normal? Is it not normal? What are the key points that we need to be looking into before we make a decision in the next step? So yeah, like if you're a person of faith, like I would say like that has been a key thing for me. And I would love for you to like just remember that anytime that something major happens in your life that you have to make a decision. And also remembering that at the end of the day, like there is a root to every pain, right? Like every obstacle, there's a root. We talked about this in the CEO mentorship. Sometimes it's not the dish that wasn't washed. It was the lack of communication that we've had for the last week that sets me off to not have a great day with my spouse, right? Like it's not the problem, it's the root that causes the problem, and understanding where that root's coming from. In business, I think it's only data.
So well said. Karen, I could talk to you for another hour. Every time I talk, I leave encouraged and having learned something new, and today's been no exception. Thank you for your generosity in sharing so freely from what you've learned so far in your journey. And I know your best days are still to come.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so too. Thank you
I
so
know
much,
it.
William. No, it's always a pleasure, and I love what you're doing. I love how you're so invested in seeing other people just grow and succeed, and you can see that with any content piece that you put out there. I've actually been tracking, some of the stuff that you put on, especially since you mentioned that you wanted to like go more into like Facebook. Now I'm like, okay, what is he putting on there? I'm keeping an eye, so I'm still watching. But I just love your heart and just like every interaction. Anybody that I talk, that when we talk about you, it's like everybody has such a great um just experience with you and conversations and with everything that you offer through your services. So I'm really excited to be part of this podcast and very honored to be in this conversation with you.
I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn more about you and what you do. What is the best way for them to do that, Karen?
I would say probably Facebook. That's the number one. I'm very active there. So if you can go to the Karen Hite, I'm very active there. Or you can go to our website, theheights.com, and that's where we talk a lot about the different things that we're doing, because we have multiple businesses. So it's kind of hard to keep track probably of which one you need to focus on. But that will give you a lot of resources and information and next steps on how we can maybe connect and yeah, more information about us.
I love it. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach to help you intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.